Hello, I am Alon Burstein, visiting assistant professor in the Department of Political Science and Israel Institute Fellow at the University of California, Irvine. Here I bring you the updates on the last 24 hours of the Israel-Hamas war. So it's currently the eve of November 7th, 2023 in the United States, the morning of November 8th, 2023 in the Middle East. Starting with the hostage situation, Thailand today reported, according to its foreign minister, that in conversations with Qatar and Egypt, he was assured that Thai citizens are the next to be released as they have nothing to do with the war. So I remind everyone that there are a large contingent of Thai citizens that were kidnapped to the Gaza Strip in the attack on October 7th as a result of the fact that this is a large area of farmland, that there are a lot of international and foreign workers in Israel. There are reportedly a total of 25 Thai citizens that were kidnapped to the Gaza Strip. According to the Thai foreign minister, they are going to be released next, whenever next is. In addition, today it was reported that there is very, very cautious optimism within Israel as a result of the visit of the head of the CIA, William Barnes. He has now left Israel and is now heading towards Qatar, and there are reports that possibly his involvement is going to facilitate the release of more hostages in the coming days. Again, all within the realm of speculations. Moving on to the ongoing fighting within the Gaza Strip. There were rockets and missiles today continuously fired towards the south and central parts of Israel. Interestingly, compared to previous days, there were specifically simultaneous barrages towards both the south and the north of Israel, possibly Hamas showing that it still has capabilities of firing such simultaneous attacks despite the IDF's activity. Rockets today landed specifically with direct hits in Ashdod, in Savion. There were rockets towards the Gush Dan and Shfila areas, a direct hit of a missile in Rishon LeZion. Also, there were rockets that targeted Bat Yam and Tel Aviv, or Yehuda, Kfar Qasem, and lots of areas around the Gaza Strip. The IDF is reporting that since the war began, it has carried out a total of 14,000 attacks in the Gaza Strip against different Hamas targets. Unclear from these reports how many of these were air raids, how many of these were ground attacks or artillery attacks. In addition, the IDF general in charge of the southern region, which of course includes the Gaza Strip, reported today that for the first time in over a decade, the IDF is fighting in the heart of Gaza City. And corroborating this, there were many reports today of infantry and armored divisions of the IDF that have moved into Gaza City and are beginning their attacks into specific areas of Hamas strongholds and outposts within the city. The IDF today exposed a Hamas tunnel in a children's theme park and had a press conference in which pictures were shown in order to demonstrate this. And there were also reports of attacks that were carried out in and around the Al-Quds hospital, where the IDF reported that there were several Hamas operatives that were firing from one of the facilities. In addition, there was a report of intensive fighting that was going on in the Al-Shati refugee camp outside of Gaza City. President Biden today reported that he asked Netanyahu in their previous conversations on Monday for a brief respite in the war. So again, not a ceasefire, just a momentary respite. And this is the first time that the U.S. publicly states that such a request was made. According to the report, Biden asked Netanyahu for a 3-day respite in order to promote the possible hostage release. And what was planned to happen is that Hamas in exchange would release 10 to 15 hostages and use the time to tally up all the hostages that it has and transfer the list of names to Israel. Netanyahu reportedly rejected this and stated that he has no faith that Hamas will actually live up to its deal. Today, Netanyahu stated that there will be no ceasefire in the Gaza Strip without the release of hostages, and Defense Minister Gallant one-upped that and said that there will be no respite without the release of hostages. Regarding the casualties in the last 24 hours, one IDF soldier was reported killed. However, I will note that the IDF often reports on its casualties only after it manages to locate and report to the family, so sometimes this takes a day or two until further reports are in. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry in the Gaza Strip, there are over 10,330 Palestinians that have been killed since the war began. Of these, upwards of 4,200 are minors. There are also reports of upwards of 25,000 people who are injured, and over 2,350 that are buried in the rubble considered missing. The United Nations today reported that 89 of its workers have been killed in the Gaza Strip since the war began. Moving on to the humanitarian front, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris today spoke to the President of Israel, Herzog, and emphasized the importance of protecting uninvolved civilians and called for an increase of humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. In addition, it was reported today that thousands of internally displaced Gazans have taken refuge in the Shifa hospital. So this is the main hospital in Gaza City that is reported that Hamas headquarters are located underneath. It may be associated with the report that I mentioned yesterday that the IDF was firing specific light bombs in and around Shifa hospital, possibly to drive civilians away from the area. So maybe reported to the fact that now it is being stated that thousands of internally displaced Palestinians are taking refuge in the hospital. In addition, hundreds of people today were seen leaving the Zaytun areas and the El Shati refugee camps in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. These were people that were heading out and evacuating towards the southern parts of the Gaza Strip. They were using specific IDF corridors. The IDF announced today that it's opening another corridor to allow more and more Palestinian civilians to evacuate down south. In addition, the IDF is now confirming what was reported yesterday, that 5 planes arrived from Abu Dhabi to El Arish, carrying what is going to be the makings of a field hospital. The IDF has approved the establishment of a field hospital in the southeastern part of the Gaza Strip. In addition, the UN is reporting that facilities in the Gaza Strip today are nearing breaking point if they do not get fuel. Israel has until now refused the entrance of any fuel. All the humanitarian aid is only food, water, and medical supplies. No fuel is being allowed in. 19 Palestinians evacuated today from Gaza to Egypt in order to receive medical attentions, and hundreds of Palestinians with dual citizenship, specifically from Jordan, Canada, Germany, France, and others, also were able to evacuate through the Rafah crossing. A total of 93 trucks carrying humanitarian aid, again, that relates only to food, water, and medical supplies, entered the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours. Moving on to the West Bank, there were several attempted attacks by Palestinians against the IDF. There was an attempted attack near the Ein Yarud area north of Ramallah, where a Palestinian with a knife tried to attack one of the soldiers and then fled. In addition, a Palestinian woman wrapped in a Hamas flag and carrying a knife tried to attack soldiers in the Kalandia crossing. This is another area north of Jerusalem, and she was shot and arrested. The head of the Shabak, which is the equivalent of the United States FBI, reportedly called Israel's finance minister Smotrich yesterday and asked him, demanded of him, that he put into effect the transfer of funds to the Palestinian Authorities. This has been a constant push and pull within Israel. Is Israel going to transfer the funds to the Palestinian Authority? There's growing concern that the Palestinian Authority will not be able to pay its salaries to different security officials and the Palestinian Authority will collapse. The head of the Shabak stated that continuously holding up the funds to the Palestinian Authority is going to destabilize the area. Finance Minister Smotrich did in fact sign the order. Now it remains to be seen if the Palestinian Authority will accept these funds, since Israel is deducting the funds that were destined for the Gaza Strip. In addition, human rights activists in Israel today appealed to the High Court of Justice, demanding the removal of the total blockade of East Jerusalem's Kfar Aqib. This is a neighborhood in East Jerusalem that is under a complete and utter blockade since the war began. The human rights activists are demanding the removal of this blockade. In addition, throughout the West Bank, there were several reported low-level confrontations today between different Palestinians and IDF forces in different towns. Moving on to the north of Israel and southern Lebanon, there were rockets today that were fired from Lebanon into various areas of the Golan Heights and throughout the Galilee. There was a barrage of 20 rockets simultaneously at one point throughout the day. Also, Hezbollah fired an air drone into the area that was shot down, and there was different gunfire incidents reported in different IDF outposts. The IDF attacked different anti-tank units and also attacked a range of Hezbollah targets, including weapon storages and different outposts. The Lebanese newspaper Al Jamhara today reported that European diplomats have asked for an open channel with Hezbollah to be maintained in their attempt to curtail the ongoing spiraling towards what they see as an inevitable end of a war. So in Europe, there's growing concern that this is going to escalate into a regional war, and diplomats are asking now to continuously be in contact with Hezbollah in order to try to actually curtail this. In addition, Lebanese news agencies today reported there was intensive IDF Air Force activity seen throughout Beirut. Moving on to the regional arena. Israel's UN ambassador today, Gilad Erdan, issued an explicit threat to the Houthi rebels in Yemen, stating that Israel is going to retaliate against their activity against Israel if and when it sees fit. So this is a bit of a change of policy when it comes to Israel. Israel has in the past not taken responsibility, certainly not publicly, for attacks that were carried out in Yemen or in Sudan or any area that is another country that is not neighboring Israel. This fact that the UN ambassador has explicitly stated that Israel is going to retaliate against Yemen is a bit of a change considering how Israel is handling the war. In addition, there was reports today from the Anti-Terrorist Bureau in Iraqi Kurdistan stating that 3 attack drones were intercepted above the Erbil airport in Iraq, and specifically in areas that are housing U.S. troops. So this is, again, another further escalation of different militias in Iraq attacking different U.S. troops throughout the area. Moving on to some of the political and general trends that have occurred. Prime Minister of Israel Netanyahu today spoke with President Macron of France and discussed the regional escalations and France's role in possibly re-establishing some calm to the region in the future. In addition, it was reported today that Ismail Haniyeh, the leader of Hamas, has traveled to Turkey where he's going to meet President Erdogan face-to-face. The U.S. envoy to the Middle East is due to travel to Lebanon and meet with Prime Minister Najib Mikati in the coming days. So this is again part of the entire international efforts to stop the ongoing escalation between Israel and Hezbollah. Russia today called for a ceasefire and commented about the Minister Amichai Eliyahu's comments the other day when Amichai Eliyahu stated that Israel should possibly nuke Gaza. Russia was the first to call out. This calls into question whether Israel is finally admitting that it has nuclear weapons. Israel has never officially admitted that. In Israel, it is required to say nuclear weapons according to international reports. This is the first time a minister has said maybe we'll nuke Gaza. Russia called into question, is Israel finally admitting that it has nuclear weapons? The Palestinian Olympic Committee today called on the International Olympic Committee to condemn Israel, citing that dozens of athletes have been killed in Israel's actions in Gaza. Saudi Arabia reported that it is going to host a summit of Arab and Islamic countries to discuss the ongoing war in Gaza. And the foreign ministers of the G7, so these are the foreign ministers of the United States, Canada, Japan, Germany, France, Italy, and the United Kingdom, met today in Tokyo to discuss the war and the day after in the Gaza Strip. They also added to their discussions the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. Moving on to the future speculation regarding the Gaza Strip, what is going to be in the day after. There was a lot of different reports today. White House spokesperson John Kirby today stated that there are active debates going on with Israel regarding how the Gaza Strip will look after the war, adding Hamas cannot be part of that equation. In addition, in a different briefing, responding to Netanyahu's statements yesterday in his ABC interview, where he said that Israel will have indefinite security control of Gaza Strip, the White House stated, and I'm quoting, "The Palestinians must be at the forefront when it comes to decisions about the future of Gaza. Gaza is a Palestinian land and will remain Palestinian land. We do not support Israel's reoccupation, and neither does Israel." In addition, in a Sky News interview today, Ron Dermer, who is a minister in Israel and an observer in the war cabinet and one of the closest people to Prime Minister Netanyahu, stated in response to questions regarding who is going to govern the Gaza Strip, and again I'm quoting, "In the future, the Palestinians will rule Gaza, but not Hamas." Asked about a future Palestinian state, he said that it is not a definitive yes or no answer. And I'm quoting again, "There have to be limits on their sovereignty, such as military or airspace. Palestinians should have the power to govern, but in ways that cannot threaten Israel." And somewhat confirming what the United States reported their ongoing debates with Israel, there were many different comments made by Israeli politicians today. Defense Minister Alon stated in response to a question about who will govern the Gaza Strip, I'm quoting, "I can tell you who will not govern it. It won't be Hamas and it won't be Israel." The head of the Israel Beitenu party, Avigdor Lieberman, who's a former defense minister, stated today that Israel should not restore the Palestinian Authority to the Gaza Strip. This was echoed by a different MK, Simcha Rotman, who also said the Palestinian Authority cannot be restored to the Gaza Strip. In turn, Aryeh Deri, who is also one of Netanyahu's close confidants in the Knesset, today responded to a question regarding who is going to control the Gaza Strip in the future. I'm quoting, "We are telling the entire world, Israel will no longer be responsible for Gaza. You," presumably referring to someone in the world, "will have to take control of it in one way or another. But we will be in charge of our own security and go into Gaza. Even once we leave, we will continue to be there and maintain our security." So once again, all this is telling us is there is no current plan for the day after. Israel does not have a plan for who's going to govern the Gaza Strip. However, that it also is being heavily debated in the different political channels in these days. That is my report for the last 24 hours. I'll be back tomorrow.